All right, so in today's podcast, we are going to be talking about the 5 must-ask questions to get to know your guy fast. Because I'm willing to bet, if you are getting out there, you're going on meetups, going on dates, you're probably thinking to yourself, how do I actually learn more about this guy quickly so I can either say next or invest some more energy? And so that's what we're going to be going over today, Gary. I hope to get to know you a little bit more. I don't know if that's possible. I feel like I know everything about you.
Ooh, juicy. Well, I hope, these questions would help you do that. And I think they would. I'm such a big fan of all 5 of these questions. And I will tell you, getting it down to 5 was tough, but like these 5s, I feel like they are the best possible questions. And what I like about this whole premise of this is so many of our clients are successful, highly accomplished. And what I find is true of everyone who fits that description is they care about efficiency. And maybe I'm just projecting because I am efficiency obsessed. It's not so much how long it takes, but it's like, am I doing this as quickly as I possibly can without wasted motion? And I hear that so often from our clients of like, gosh, I'm dying to get this note. Why is it taking so long to get to know this guy? And we have one client right now who is on date number 8 with a guy. And she's like, I just don't know about him. Like, wait, why? Why? It's like, what questions are you asking? Well, we do a lot of chit chatting. I'm like, oh, there it is. There's your answer. Like, you're being very inefficient. And so, we're not going too far into that. It's just this idea of, I think there's a way without just haranguing a guy with a ton of questions to just, you pepper in these 5, you're going to get to know so much. And what we're going to do with each of them is kind of break down, what are you going to get to know, what a good response looks like, what bad responses look like. So it's like half as much, twice as well.
Yeah. I think this just goes to the classic idea of just a little bit of prep will save you so much pain later.
Yeah.
Because if you and when I say prep, just think about what don't I know about this guy? And then bring one of these questions to the next meetup or date with him. And I'm telling you, it's going to just enlighten your world, right? Yeah. And for the good or for the bad. And I think the reason why people don't sometimes ask these types of questions, Gary, is because they don't want to know. Like they want to know, but they don't want to know because, man, he's tall and he's handsome. He's got a great job. He's great with his kids. And do I really want to know if he's a good fit or not? I don't know. I just want to kind of keep this thing going.
Yeah, right.
And so I would just really encourage everyone, don't just be info junkies listening to this stuff. Actually use it and get that knowledge so you can take action, like real action as a result.
Yeah, and I think I will, before we get into the questions, I'm going to share the same caveat I share with clients every week on the masterminds, which is we're going to give you wording for these questions. There's nothing magical about the precise exact wording of these things. So what I don't, you write it down, take notes for sure, but don't write it on your hand and then take it on a date. So you're reading off of your hand these exact words. It's not that the words are magical. It's make these words your own. And that's what makes this all work, right? It's the ideas behind it. And so, this is some of the secret sauce, as it were, that we bring to our clients and our masterminds, and we're going to share a little bit today.
Yeah, I love it. So should we just jump into it, Gary?
Yeah. Can I do the first? I want to do the first one. First one is one of my all-time favorite questions. And this is a question been asking on interviews my whole life. Anytime I've interviewed anybody, I've asked them some version of this question, which is my favorite question of all time. So drum roll. What is the most common misconception people have about you? Right? This question. So what are you going to learn from this question? You're going to learn how this person thinks. What is their self-awareness? What is their preferred identity? What is the identity they think they're projecting out into the world, and how do they deal with someone in that world not seeing them the way they want to be seen? So I love this question because so much of my own research is around your sense of self, your self-concept, who you are as a person, your identity, and how that impacts relationships. And we know not surprisingly, I think that the impact of who you are as a person on your relationships, immensely powerful. And so with this, you ask this question, what is the most common misperception people have about you? And the most critical thing you're going to get is you're going to see how this guy thinks on his feet and how he processes an interpersonal question.
Yeah. It's also like, it's a very deep question in many ways. Like, it really makes you have to, by the nature of this question, you're actually cutting through the surface level stuff and being like, well, everyone else sees you one way, but what are they missing?
Right.
You know, what's underneath the surface, dude? Let's go deep on this. I love it. I could picture clients maybe smoking a doobie with their guy. Sorry, did I go there? Don't do drugs, kids. But
Drugs aren't cool. Stay in school.
I could picture myself in high school when I smoked my first joint, thinking like, "What is your biggest misconception?" You know, like,
Yeah. But I think, like we talk about so often in dating, we focus on traits. Do they like to go hiking? What's their favorite activity? Or, it's just the things you can read from a profile. This question is something you can never get from a profile. This is not something you can really get even from a text. Like, you have to have this conversation because you also just want to see real, live, and in person, how do they process this? Because what I love about a lot of these questions, pretty much all of them, it's not things that people have prepared for. Because a lot of dating is like preparing for a job interview where you have a certain sense of the basic questions people are going to ask. Where'd you grow up? What was your family life like? There's some basic standards. This is one that's going to come out of nowhere and they're going to be like, wait, what? What's that now? What's the biggest misconception? Wait, what? Wow. And you get to see them think on their feet. And I think that is so revealing because we want to know, can this person do that? Can they take perspective? Can they see the world through someone else's eyes? And so I think a really good answer for someone who has really high self-understanding, someone who really knows themselves well, they should be able to answer this fairly quickly in the sense that, people think I'm an extrovert, but I'm really more introverted, honestly, and like to recharge alone, right? And so if you know yourself pretty well, that's one that would come out. That was easy for me to come up with an example because that's generally one of my standard responses to something like this is many people think I'm super extroverted, which I'm not actually. Like I'm ambivert maybe, I don't know, but it's like I like alone time. Like I'm fine like that.
that was the first one that came to mind for me as well. I mean, I am an extrovert, but I also am a big recharger. I'm a big, give me the full day. If we have an event with clients, the next 2 days, I'm like, don't talk to me. I'm in my hole. I just need total recharge alone time, which is interesting because my wife is not that way at all. In fact, her recharge time is be with more people all the time.
Yeah, so she's a real extrovert.
She's like a true extrovert. Right. But I'm thinking of that aside, I'm just imagining the really masculine cowboy who's on a date and you ask him this question and he's just like, well, I cry sometimes. Something really.
Solid cowboy voice, by the way. Yeehaw, Adam. Yeehaw.
Yeehaw. After the ranch, milk my cows and shooting some of them. God, I'm such a city slicker.
I was going to say, you're running out of material fast.
Pew, pew, pew. After that, I cry to myself. I really think that, I'm sensitive. I'm a very sensitive man. And guess what? Let's say that cowboy does say something like that. It's a very extreme moment, but, it's a moment of vulnerability to actually share that. I think this is good stuff.
And it opens up a lot of follow-up questions. Right? It also opens up the possibility, and you should do this for all these questions, which is having your own response to this, because you are going to put the guy on the spot because he's not expecting this question. And so you can always say, well, sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but why you think about I've thought about this for myself, and for myself, it's blank, 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 blank. It's also a chance for you to be a little bit vulnerable in a way that's safe, right? It's kind of on your own terms, which I think is helpful too.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the next one, which is all about his relationships with his closest friends. And it could sound something like, how would you describe your relationships with your closest friends or family? And maybe even to go deeper, you could ask especially during those really challenging times. And I think that this is a really, really good one because the quality of our platonic and familial relationships typically mirror the quality of our romantic relationships. It's not exact in many ways, but they tend to correlate with one another. And you're going to get a feel for his attachment style, right? How it is that he connects with other people, what they think, what he thinks about his kind of support system, his familial relationships, how he handles emotional intimacy, right? If they're comfortable with their relationships, how he handles stress and conflict. I mean, you're going to learn a lot based on just generally speaking, what his relationships are like with all of his closest friends and family. And if he's coming back and saying, look, let me tell you, every single person in my life is crazy, and that's why I've cut them all off, and I don't want to talk to a single person. I just want to be with you. Run.
Right.
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 Run for the hills. Right. Whereas if it's a more nuanced understanding, and look, no one has perfect relationships, and you're not even looking for that. You're looking at how he perceives these relationships and how he handles these conflicts. So let's say he had a challenging childhood with a parent, with his mother or father. He could certainly reveal the challenges he had growing up. But a great response might be what he's learned from that and how he's grown from it. Or if he's having challenges with someone at work, talking about that. Everyone's got challenges at work. Everyone's got interpersonal conflict. But how does he handle those situations, and how does he think about it? How does he navigate that? Is he constantly playing the victim card, like everyone around me is the problem, they need to change, yada, yada, yada? Or is he taking some ownership? I think you learn a lot about a person with this question.
Yeah, because when it comes down to it, two of the questions you should want to ask when you start dating somebody is, what's your attachment style and how do you handle conflict? Right. But you can't just come right out and ask those things. It sounds a little much, right? And so this question is ideal to navigate around both of those issues in a way that's conversational, and you can really you can learn a ton, right? And so I think a good response to this question is, I try to talk through things calmly and understand the other person's perspective. Like, that's a really secure response. They're addressing the problem. They're dealing with conflict head on. They might also say, I don't avoid tough conversations, or, I always trust that we can work through issues together. Right. And it's like, that's much better than some of the bad responses, which is, when things get rough, I shut down. And I need days by myself. Like, I run from problems. Like, I block the world out and I don't want to deal with it. Or, I get really anxious. I need constant reassurance that everything's okay. Like, that sounds a little bit more anxious. And so a lot of this, again, is just how somebody reacts to this question. Are they being thoughtful? And like Adam said, are they playing the victim and blaming everybody else around them? Are they, taking a little bit of ownership about how they deal with things and how they address situations?
I'm just imagining a client on a date with a cowboy and being like, so cowboy, what's your attachment style? He's right. Like, attachment style. my accent. God, I really need to sit and work on my accents, man. Attachment style. What is that?
What in tarnation is an attachment style?
Ooh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I got some friends that live in the country.
That's really good. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, let's move on. I could riff on this cowboy thing. Yeah. I'll leave the audience to.
All right, partner. So let's move on to number 3. So the number 3 question of the questions you need to ask to really get to know a guy fast is, describe your ideal ordinary day. And now, importantly, ordinary is super important because, and you want to clarify this. This is not your vacation. This is not a special occasion. This is not, if you win $1 million, how would you spend that day kind of thing. It's like, no. What's your basic Tuesday? And what would make you consistently happy, right? Because this is actually the stuff that your relationship is going to be mostly full of. Ordinary, everyday Tuesdays. And Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays and all the days. But like, you're going to have mostly ordinary days. And so like, let's ask. Let's see how he thinks about those ordinary days. Because what you're going to learn about this guy is what's his consistent state? What's his typical? What's his, nerdy term? Homeostasis. Like, what is his typical everyday kind of state of being? and you're going to learn about his priorities and values. You're going to learn about some work-life balance things. Like in his typical ordinary day, is he working a lot? Is he spending time with other people? Is he super active? Like I know such a big concern for our clients. Most of our clients, because they're successful, they are like go, 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 go. Like they're constantly wanting to do things. Like they're out there doing. And one of the biggest disappointments they have is like when the guy's like, nah, I just want to sit here and watch TV. And so, you find out their ordinary days sitting around on the couch, with a bowl of popcorn watching Netflix for the entire day. Well, you're going to learn something. And like, what a great question that no one gets asked on a date, right?
Right. Well, all the questions on a date is, tell me your perfect dream life. What does it look like? Knowing that 99.999% of these people are not going to achieve their dream life. So, like, there is something to that question. I'm not totally against that. And I think that is a different set of information you get from a person with their future values and where they're going. But this one just kind of gets you into the reality of the now, right? And it's not just like, tell me what you do every day. It's like, tell me about your ideal ordinary day. And it does give you those priorities. It does give you those values. Man, I'm trying to think of mine. I'm thinking like just a good night's sleep, a little bit of work, go kite surfing, date night with the wife, hang out with some other people.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Right. But like how important is that answer? So much more important than what's your ideal vacation? Right. It's like, I don't know. And I think, in terms of a good response, there's not necessarily a standard good response. I think the thing you're really looking for is not whether the answer is good or not. It's only good to the extent it's compatible with your ideal ordinary day. Right? If their ordinary day is sitting around all day doing nothing and yours is going out and being active, that's illuminating. We'll say, that's going to tell you something. If they want to include their partner in their ordinary day and your best ordinary day is doing something by yourself, okay, like that also and so this is why I think this question is so important. Because again, your future relationship is going to be filled with a lot of ordinary days that with the right person become extraordinary.
Yeah. This is so funny. It reminds me of a client. I wouldn't say her name, but you probably may or may not know who I'm talking about. But she comes on a mastermind one time and is like, Adam, I'm meeting all these guys who are so active. They like to do stuff every weekend. They love to go out to really nice dinners. They like to play golf. They just want to like get me doing all this stuff. And I'm like, amazing. That sounds great. She's like, Adam, I don't want to do anything. I'm the type of person that sits at home and I just like to watch TV. I like to make my tea and I like literally don't want to leave the house from Friday night till Sunday night. Like, don't get me out of the house. I'm like, it's just like, as I'm listening to this, I'm like, cool, we're totally fine. And she did find someone who meets that criteria, which is incredible. They can have their boring life together. But it's so funny to me because I'm just like, oh God, that is so antithetical to me. Like when I was talking to her, I'm just like, man, me and you would just never get along. We'd be such a bad match for each other.
Right. But what's hilarious, that is the magic of relationships, right? Yeah. It's not that any person is a good relationship partner or not. It has everything to do with how their likes and desires and their ordinary day syncs up and matches up and aligns with yours. And it's something that I'm sure the fact that when I just said that, most of you listening are like, well, that's obvious. It's so obvious, but yet we don't necessarily date with those things in mind. We date based on traits instead of some of these dynamics, and the dynamics hugely, hugely important.
Well, we date with ideals. We're always thinking about this idealized version of the other person because we're in that early phase of dating where we idealize a person. We don't think about how in 3 months it's just going to become super normalized to just sit next to this person on the couch. He farts and then you laugh and you continue watching TV. Or maybe it takes a year to get to that point. I don't know. That's probably more realistic. But 98% of your time spent in a relationship tends to be pretty boring. Like you're just kind of hanging out with each other. All right, maybe 90% if you have a good one. But like you get my point. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really just creating compatibility with that. So moving on to the next question. which is one of my favorites because it twists a question I think a lot of people typically ask, which is, tell me about your past relationships, which I think is not a good question because it just opens the door to exes and venting about divorce and so on and so forth. This frames it a little bit differently, which is, how have your past relationships shaped what you're looking for in a partner now? Ooh, there's a little bit of spice there. I'm feeling that spice with this. But I think you learn so much from this question of how your past relationships shaped you into your being now, because you're going to really learn about, do they know what they really want from a partner or relationship? Have they actually gone through that process of reflecting on past experiences and these ideal that they used to have? How have they processed the past? Like, have they gone through this horrible divorce and are just still lingering and ruminating on that divorce and focusing on how, oh, those 3 past ex-wives are just, they were all out to get me? Or are they thinking to themselves, you know what? I made some tough decisions in the past. I made some wrong decisions and I've learned a lot through that experience. I've read a lot about this and I've been focusing my energy now on looking for a partner who is X, Y, and Z. You know, I think you learn so much about a person's thought process when they answer this question. So this is a good one, Gary.
Yeah, what I've come to learn about our clients over the last several years and our podcast listeners is there's a certain trait they all share, and it's this desire to grow, to learn, this desire for improvement, for expansion, to become more educated. And what I like about the twist on this question is this idea of, how has it shaped you? Because it invites the guy to share his insights, philosophy even, about growth and change. And, you know, the fact of life is we're all going to go through hard times, and sometimes we're going to have some hard relationships. But it's, what do you take from those experiences? Can you extract the lesson? Can you learn from that past experience to realize, I don't want a partner who's A, B, and C. I'm really looking for someone who's X, Y, and Z. And I think if you really, again, think to the dynamics and you think of some of like those interpersonal traits you really value, if you're listening to this podcast, you care about growth. You care about someone who's smart and insightful. This gives that guy a chance to flex some of those insight muscles to see if he's able to grow and change and learn from a past relationship, good or bad, right? It doesn't even necessarily have to be a bad past relationship. It could be a good, you know, we were great in all these ways, but there was this one thing, and what I really learned was blank. And it's like, it's such a fertile ground for a guy to really share how thoughtful he is. And so I think good answers to this question are him being specific instead of vague. Oh, well, you know, I learned, you know, there's some women I just don't like. Like that's not a good answer, but it's like, is he able to take responsibility? Is he able to be specific? Like, oh, I really figured out that I really value someone who's more curious than judgmental. Oh, like that, boy, that's not only a good insight, but that sounds like a pretty darn good quality to have in a future partner. Is he
Don't judge him if he says that. All right. So if he's don't judge him, all right, or else it's out. Be curious.
But I think, you know, it's also, when you ask this kind of question, you're not necessarily focusing on the emotional things, but does he focus on the emotional things, or does he focus on the practical things? Oh, well, I learned I can't, you know, date somebody that doesn't put the cap back on the toothpaste. Okay. Right? Like, you know, but I also think it's interesting. You will get some unintentionally revealing information where they might say, I need to date someone who's not a narcissist. Okay. All right. So now we have a little bit of insight into who you were dating and who you thought was responsible versus, you know, taking more responsibility, which is, I need to hold more boundaries early in a relationship. That's another way to say the same thing, right?
Right. Hot take, Gary.
Ooh.
But here it is. If you or the guy you're with says that everyone that they've dated is a narcissist, and I'm telling you, like, they're like, everyone I've dated is a narcissist, be very careful. That is a massive red flag.
Agree.
Because the type of people who say that, they tend to be narcissists themselves.
Spicy. Spicy take.
Is that a spicy take?
It's a spicy take. Here's the great news. Research backs it up completely.
Oh, thank God. All right.
Completely. And it's like, no, and we've actually, I don't look at the podcast comments all the time, but we talked about this on a previous episode, and somebody was very mad that I'm going to blame you. You said this. But this is completely validated by research, is that people who have narcissistic tendencies are attracted to fellow narcissists because there's something about like, ooh, they like the spotlight. They're charismatic. It's appealing because we are attracted to things that we aspire to be. And so when you see some of these narcissistic traits in somebody else, it resonates with you because you're kind of like that and want to be a little bit like that, versus someone who's not very narcissistic sees that attention-seeking behavior and they're like, ooh, gross. Right? And it's not something we often think about. And it sounds a little bit like blaming the victim, because when you've been with somebody who's narcissistic, that sucks. I mean, that's a terrible experience. But it's, control the controllables, and it's always easier to look within than blame without.
No doubt. And obviously, yeah, like you said, some people have been married to a narcissist for 20, 30 years. That's a very different situation than someone who says that they've been with everyone they've ever dated is a narcissist. So It's very different. But bring on the comments. Let's go. Let's do it. I'm not afraid. Look, I think the goal of this podcast is you don't have to agree with everything we say, but hopefully it makes you think a little bit differently.
Amen.
That's really the goal.
Amen. You just sounded, what you just sounded like?
What?
A good college professor.
Ooh.
Right? Like, that's exactly it's the whole point of education. It's like, you don't have to agree. I'm not trying to give you ideas to agree or disagree with a lot of times. It's like, I'm just challenging the way you think so that whatever conclusion you arrive at is more well thought out. And so, you don't have to agree. I mean, the research says it's true, but I mean, you can still even see the nuance in that and just work with that to more fully develop your own ideas.
In fact, like we've said this internally a number of times, and I feel this pretty strongly, where our coaches will have one-on-one coaching calls with our like VIP clients. And if those one-on-one coaching calls they're too high sometimes, like 10 out of 10 reviews on those calls, I'm like, are we challenging them enough? Like, because I want a good negative review every once in a while. I want someone to get off a call every once in a while where I'm talking to them and they're like, oh, I hate that Adam. He's so annoying. Like, what is his problem? He's so stupid with that hair and the way he talks. Can you just shut up? And then they give me a bad review, and that's great. But then it kind of sinks in for a couple of days, and it kind of sticks with them. Clearly it pissed them off enough that they wanted to leave that review. And then they come back and they're like, maybe I will take a deeper look at that situation. And then 3 months later, they're in the best relationship of their life. Hey, I'll take the bad review for that.
Yeah. Well, it's, again, this is like being a good teacher, a good coach, is you're always playing the long game. And so anybody gets upset here and now in the moment because they've been challenged on an existing belief or pattern, I'll take it, because I care more about what's going to happen to you in 3 months and 6 months. Like, it's all the down the road stuff. And I know a little short-term pain with support, a little tough love now is going to get you where you want to be in 6 months. And if we're not, if you don't have someone there to kind of push you along, it's going to be harder to get there. And so that combination of pushing with support, that's the magic combination. And again, it's not always today that it happens. It sometimes takes a little bit.
Yeah, we care more about your future self than your current self, if I'm being honest. Yeah. Which actually segues
perfect segue.
Perfect into the final question, which is the classic: where do you see yourself in 5 years? And this is a really good one, but I think people know about this question, but they don't use it enough in my experience. They don't actually ask this question, and I'm wondering if it's because they're concerned that perhaps this is too forward to ask someone. I'm not sure why, but that's my hypothesis. I always wonder why people don't like to ask this question. And maybe it's not a first date question. It could be a second or a third date question. But where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Are you aligned in the goals of what you're looking for? It really does reveal their priorities. It reveals their ambitions, their lifestyle, how relationships actually fit into their life. If he's like, look, I want to live on an island off of Thailand and go partying at, what are they, full moon parties every month.
White Lotus.
Yeah, White Lotus. Yes. Oh my God, what an ending. Okay, I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to be a spoiler. But if you haven't watched White Lotus, go for it for sure. But yeah, it's very revealing, you know. Whereas, are they really thoughtful and have clarity, and they're the type of person who's like, yeah, in 5 years, I would love to, you know, retire, live outside the city, buy a piece of property, and be with a person who makes my heart sing. And you're like, yes, we're totally aligned. It gives you just that vision into their ideal future. You know, I love it.
Well, you know, I started off this podcast with the warning of, you know, don't memorize these, you know, make these your own. Still true, but this is this question is very specific in the sense that it's, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You're talking about why people hesitate to use it. Make sure you don't alter this question to be about relationships, love, partnering, anything about relationships.
Yeah.
Or retirement or marriage, or like,
Do you see yourself married in 5 years?
Right. And I think like that's a terrible question. Do you see us together in 5 years? Like asking that on a first date, that guy, he can't get out of there fast enough, right?
Not after that question.
Right?
Definitely not. Yeah.
And so I do think like this is one, like just stick to the plan. Stick to the, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And then you get a chance to hear a good response from a guy. You know, in 5 years, I hope to grow personally and professionally and spending time with the people I love. Great response. But I know I've heard this from clients, because our clients, we teach them to ask these kinds of questions, and they'll report back how it goes. And they'll say, you know, just had one 2 weeks ago, said, you know, I asked the 5-year question, and he said, I don't really think that far ahead. I just go with the flow and I live one day at a time and see what happens. And she's like, is that a good sign? No, no, it's not. I mean, it's great for him. Like I'm not judging that response necessarily. Like, people are more than welcome to live that, but that's not great for relationship intent. It's not someone who's commitment oriented. It doesn't sound like somebody who's relationship ready or in a space to prioritize a relationship. And again, for that person, good for them, but not necessarily if you're someone looking for a long-term fulfilling relationship.
Oh my God. If I was asked that question when I was like 25 and just playing the dating game, and one was like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm like, I don't know. I don't even worry about that. Let's just focus on you and me and right now. Yeah. And if I could go back in time and slap that kid over the face, across the face, I would. Now that I'm getting into the big 4-0, you know, I'm getting a little bit older, grayer hair, turning 40. Man, I think back to those moments. I'm just like, oh God. But that is what a guy would respond with if he's not serious about anything. He's just like, oh, you know, let's not do that. You know, instead, actually, I got a great movie back at my place. I got some good music too. We can hang out, great bottle of wine. No.
It's great though, because guys will answer this honestly. They don't necessarily see it as a trap question. And I think they will give that kind of response of like, oh, I don't think that far ahead. Let's just focus on now, baby. And they think that sounds philosophical and intellectual and cool. And maybe it does, but it's also revealing in terms of what their priorities are. Amen. And that's why we ask these kind of questions, because if you can just take these 5 questions and incorporate them into your dating repertoire, you're going to learn a ton more about guys a lot faster than by asking them long lists of 20 or 30 questions.
Amen. So for those who are listening right now and you want these questions, we'll post them in lovestrategies.com. We'll post them on the blog. Gary, you can put that in the notes so you have them. But I'll just do a quick review for those who are just listening and want to have them. First question is, what is the most common misconception people have about you? The second question is, how would you describe your relationship with your closest friends or family members, particularly during challenging times? The third one is, describe your ideal ordinary day. The fourth one is, how have your past relationships shaped what you're looking for in a partner now? And the last one, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Go out there, go use these. Make sure you have a great response, because the guy's going to ask you them back to you. So prepare a little bit. And we can't wait to walk with you every single step of the way. If you want more help in your love life, we are here as your executive love coaches at any time. If you ever want to work with us, lovestrategies.com. Thank you, Gary. You are awesome. This was fantastic.
All right. Thanks, Adam.